Well, I woke up with good news today. Maybe you've heard the US and the Taliban have signed a peace deal that will send all American troops home in 14 months and pave the way to end of 18-year Afghanistan war. Trump just made history. I think this is historic, but Trump will really make history, assuming he gets reelected and we follow through on this deal, or even in the event he doesn't get reelected. If America follows through on this deal and we end the Afghanistan war, this is an historic moment. And I got to say, amazing good news. Trump still has some way to go on improving foreign policy as far as I'm concerned, but this is better than basically any other president in my generation. And credit where credit is due. I'd like to see us not sending weapons to Saudi Arabia for cash because we're in a proxy war with them for their war with Yemen or whatever. But instead of sitting here and complaining about the things I don't like, Trump doing in foreign policy, we've got to acknowledge the good things and encourage more of it. And even the Daily Mail says this could give Trump a major boost towards his reelection. And now we have the scary thought. Perhaps, I'm going to be a little conspiratorial, perhaps the 14-month deal is because it means Trump basically has to win reelection. Otherwise, you run the risk of some other, of a Democrat getting in office and then canceling this deal and the war remaining. And if we get one of these crony establishment warmongers, it is kind of worrisome. I'm not entirely confident in Bernie Sanders, but I also think if Bernie was able to win, he would not cancel this deal. He'd also end it. So there's hoping. I think for the most part, we have a really, really great chance this could finally be the end of the stupid waste of American resources in a country we have nothing to do with. Let's read the story from the Daily Mail. The United States and the Taliban have signed a peace agreement aimed at ending the 18-year war in Afghanistan, potentially helping President Donald Trump fulfill a key campaign promise to extract America from its endless wars. I voted for Barack Obama because he said he was going to get these troops out. He didn't. He bolstered these troops. He increased drone bombings. Donald Trump has also increased drone attacks too. And that's important to point out. So nobody's perfect. But I can't believe here I am. And it was Donald Trump, the man who actually, at least for now, is trying to pull through with this peace agreement. One of the most amazing things so far that I'm dumbfounded by is this photo. Let me scroll down to this photo. I want to show you this. It's there we go. Check this out. Is this the future? General Austin Miller, the most senior U.S. and NATO commander in Afghanistan, walked the streets of Kabul without body armor this week and posed for selfies as the reduction in violence took hold. Wow. Donald Trump met with Kim Jong-un and he got blasted for it. Donald Trump crossed into North Korea over the DMZ with no security and got blasted for it. I certainly do not think what he's doing is perfect, but you have to understand when Trump crossed to the DMZ into North Korea, they could have snatched him up. He gave up his security. It was a sign of goodwill, and it was risky, and he did it, and he was confident, and it worked out very, very well for the most part. Now, North Korea certainly is still pushing buttons. It's not like we've ended everything, but I gotta say, while I don't think the man is perfect, there's a lot to criticize him for on foreign policy. Credit where credit is due. When I saw this photo of General Austin Miller taking selfies with people in the street, I was like, whoa. I mean, that's ridiculously risky, but it says to me that the U.S. is confident that their deal with the Taliban is gonna work. It's gonna happen. So much so that the dude's gonna walk around with any armor. Presumably, I don't even know if he has like a heavy security detail. He's just with people taking selfies. Maybe it's staged. I don't know. Whatever the point is, this is all confidence building. I gotta say, I'm really excited by this. One of the things I explain in terms of what I take a hard moral stance on is I think killing is wrong, wrong, wrong. Therefore, war is like the epitome of what I don't like. And more importantly, why are we as Americans funding world police BS? When we spend money on military weapons and stuff, a lot of that money does get spent in the U.S. and it does help our economy. A fraction of it is spent over in Afghanistan building roads and other kind of construction. But that there are American contractors who do a lot of that work. So the money still does work for us in the United States. But I wonder why we are doing that in the first place. Can we have those contractors, say, go to Flint and fix some pipes? How about that? I know, we've made progress in that front. The point I'm trying to make is that we have problems with our own infrastructure, with our own homeless. And why would anyone think it makes sense for us to build roads in a foreign country that we shouldn't even be in the first place, that we've always been planning on leaving? Unless, of course, the machine was never planning on leaving, so they thought they needed some roads. I'm glad to see it. I'm not a fan of the Taliban. Absolutely not. These people are nasty people. But you know what? I shouldn't be overly critical if we're walking towards peace. I hope that things work out well in Afghanistan, that whatever ends up happening with the Taliban, there is a concern that these people are going to be, zealots, fundamentalists like they are, and it could be bad for the freedoms of the people in there, in Afghanistan, that things they've earned. But I ultimately just do not believe the United States should be playing these games. Now I know there's a risk that Russia, China, and other interests start moving in. Well, what are you going to do about it? Are we going to put troops in literally every single part of the world? No, we're not going to do it. And we should be bolstering our defenses, our border security, our country, our manufacturing base. Because when you look at what's going on around the world right now, that certain, illness that's been spread around, why can't we manufacture the things we need for this? Why are we relying on China to manufacture our goods? I really do think, it's not so much, I know the people who say America first tend to be much more conservative and have a very hard stance. But you gotta admit, to a degree, America should not be the world police. Now, I understand foreign aid and things like that. I can agree with a lot of that to a certain extent. I think it's great that we, a very wealthy nation, do a lot to try and help other countries. The war stuff, not a big fan of. And I certainly think we've got serious problems with homelessness in California, infrastructure in Flint, in Newark, New Jersey. I'm looking forward to us prioritizing these things and having these contractors fix our own country, because I don't know or care about what's going on in many of these places. Now, of course, when horrifying groups of people do horrifying things to the innocent, I think to a certain extent there is a red line where we've got to figure out what we can do. But with Afghanistan, this was a lie. It was a mistake. I mean, well, maybe not so much Afghanistan. Iraq was the big lie and the big mistake, but I do think overall it was all a mistake. We can protect our borders, bolster our security, and protect our people without having to rely on foreign conflict and war. Let's read more. Under the agreement, the U.S. will begin withdrawing thousands of troops in exchange for Taliban commitments to prevent Afghanistan from being a launch pad for terror attacks. If the Taliban meet their commitments, all U.S. troops would leave in 14 months. Yes, this is one of the best things I've ever heard. I got to be honest. The U.S. invaded Afghanistan after the start of September 11th to overthrow the Taliban, which had hosted Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda, as they planned and celebrated the assault. The Taliban itself, though a violent group inside Afghanistan, isn't believed to have directly engaged in international terror against the West. We can see all of these photos. This is amazing. This is amazing stuff. Pompeo says the U.S. is realistic about the peace deal it signed with the Taliban, but it's seizing the best opportunity for peace in a generation. Speaking after the signing ceremony in Qatar, Pompeo said he was still angry about the 9/11 attacks that were planned by al-Qaeda under Taliban protection in Afghanistan. Pompeo said the U.S. will not squander what its soldiers have won through blood, sweat, and tears. He said the U.S. will do whatever is necessary for its security if the Taliban do not comply with the agreement. U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper, meanwhile, traveled to Kabul on a visit that officials and experts said was aimed at reassuring the Afghan government about the United States' commitment to the country. For Trump, the deal represents a chance to make good on his promise to bring U.S. troops home, but security experts have also called it a foreign policy gamble that would give the Taliban international legitimacy. So what? It's not our country. It is not a state of the United States. We shouldn't be there. For Trump, the deal represents a chance. Today is a monumental day for Afghanistan, the U.S. Embassy in Kabul said on Twitter. It is about making peace and crafting a common, brighter future. We stand with Afghanistan. Hours before the deal, the Taliban ordered all its fighters in Afghanistan to refrain from any kind of attack for the happiness of the nation. The biggest thing is that we hope the U.S. remain committed to the promises during the negotiation and peace deal. So do I. Though the U.S. are planning to withdraw, there are still more than 16,500 soldiers serving under the NATO banner. Germany has the next largest contingent after the U.S., with 1,300 troops, followed by Britain with 1,100. Sources told the Mail Online there will be no immediate change to British military presence in the country. In all, 38 NATO countries are contributing forces to Afghanistan, The alliance officially concluded its combat mission in 2014 and now provides training and support to Afghan forces. And I don't care about what these other countries want to do. I'm glad that that our soldiers, our men and women in uniform, are going to come home. And I hope this means we will prioritize our infrastructure, which has been crumbling, especially in New York. These photos are really, really inspiring, I got to say. You know, look, I don't know. You want to argue conspiracies, whatever, foreign policy blunders. I don't know, man. You are not likely to convince me there is a good reason why America should be world police. In some regards, you know, I can understand why we get involved in international conflict, like World War II, for instance. And we've got serious issues with China today. But Afghanistan? Look, I get it. I understand how this started. But we concluded our mission in 2014, right? Why have we been sitting there? America is now the biggest producer of fossil fuel, net exporter of fossil fuels, I believe. So certainly that argument's out the window. All I know is Trump's making good on that promise that Obama didn't even make good on. I don't know what that says, but it does say something, doesn't it? Again, Trump is not perfect on foreign policy, but this is still one of the best things done by the past few presidents. I understand it was Bush who started it, then Obama carried it on, and Trump is now ending it. Good. Mujahid said, "It was irritating and provocative that foreign military aircraft continued to fly over Taliban territory, but militia fighters were following the order to stand down. For millions of Afghans, the deal represents some hope for an end to years of bloodshed. Peace is extremely simple and my country deserves it. Today is the day when maybe we will see a positive change," said Javed Hassan, 38, a school teacher living on the outskirts of Kabul. Hassan's children were killed in a bomb blast carried out by the Taliban in 2018. Since then, he has been writing letters to world leaders urging them to end the Afghan war. President George W. Bush ordered the U.S.-led invasion of Afghanistan in response to 9/11. Some U.S. troops currently serving there had not yet been born when the World Trade Center collapsed on that crisp, sunny morning that changed how Americans see the world. How insane is this? Not yet been born. That's mind-blowing. It only took a few months to topple the Taliban and send Osama bin Laden and the top al-Qaeda militants scrambling across the border into Pakistan. But the war dragged on for years as the U.S. tried to establish a stable, functioning state in one of the least developed countries in the world. Why? Why is it our responsibility to build a government for you? I don't know. The Taliban regrouped and currently hold sway over half the country. The U.S. spent more than $750 billion, and on all sides, the war cost tens of thousands of lives lost, permanently scarred and indelibly interrupted. But the conflict was also frequently ignored by U.S. politicians and the American public. Ahead of the peace deal, Pompeo privately told a conference of U.S. ambassadors at the State Department that he was going only because Trump had insisted on his participation, according to two people present. We got a whole bunch of photos. This photo to me is amazing. This is really, really amazing. Seeing a NATO commander just walking around taking selfies with people. I'm so hopeful that this works out and we finally get out. I don't understand how you can talk about healthcare, you can complain about Flint and Trump and all these things before we've talked about ending these foreign wars that make no sense, at least not to the American people. Dozens of Taliban members, meanwhile, held a small victory march in Qatar in which they waved the militant group's white flags, according to a video shared on Taliban websites. "Today is the day of victory, which has come with the help of Allah," said, isn't it funny that they're cheering and so are anti-war activists? Like, who wants this? Trump has repeatedly promised to get the U.S. out of its endless wars in the Middle East, and the withdrawal of troops could provide a boost as he seeks re-election in a nation weary of involvement in distant conflicts. But I'll tell you who's angry. Our permanent government friends who think we should remain there forever, for whatever reason. U.S. troops are to be withdrawn to 8,600 from about 13,000 in weeks following Saturday's signing. Further drawdowns are to depend on the Taliban meeting certain counter-terror conditions, compliance that will be assessed by the United States. Trump has approached the Taliban agreement cautiously, steering clear of the crowing surrounding other major foreign policy actions, such as his talks with North Korea. Last September, on short notice, he called off what was to be a signing ceremony with the Taliban at Camp David after a series of new Taliban attacks. But he has since been supportive of the talks led by Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad. Under the agreement, the Taliban promises not to let extremists use the country as a staging ground for attacking the U.S. or its allies. But U.S. officials are loath to trust the Taliban to fulfill their obligations. The prospects for Afghanistan's future are uncertain. The agreement sets the stage for peace talks involving Afghan factions, which are likely to be complicated. Under the agreement, 5,000 Taliban are to be released from Afghan-run jails, but it's not known if the Afghan government will do that. There are also questions about whether Taliban fighters loyal to various warlords will be willing to disarm. Maybe they won't. But I'll tell you what, good faith has to start somewhere. If we're willing to say we'll give you a chance, there's a cautious time period. If they don't abide by our agreements, then they lose that chance, they squander it, and that, I think that's a safe and fair approach. I am not the world's foremost expert on foreign policy. I can't tell you literally everything that's going to happen or could result from this. I can tell you as an American, I'm sick and tired of what's been happening in the Middle East because it's been more than half of my life. That's insane to me. And that we have soldiers there, they weren't even alive when the attacks happened in the first place. I hope their commitment is true, that they won't allow people to, terrorists to use their country as a base of operations against us, because that was the problem in the first place. They go on to say, it's not clear what will become of gains made in women's rights since the toppling of the Taliban, which had repressed women and girls under a strict brand of Sharia law. Women's rights in Afghanistan had been a top concern of both the Bush and Obama administration, but it remains a deeply conservative country, with women still struggling for basic rights. That's true, but we can see that reform has been coming in certain small steps. And while it's not as fast as someone like I would like, as a fairly liberal individual, I don't know what you think the answer is going to be. It's certainly not war. But I think soft power and pressure and the idea of prosperity will be enough to convince people to adopt, certain reforms. I was talking to someone the other day and I said, listen, I think opportunity and business, I dare I say capitalism, is one of the biggest driving factors in improving civil liberties and civil rights. If you want your economy to grow, if you want to become wealthy, you're going to need people working. That includes women. And so there are a lot of things that need to change if you want your country to prosper. And freedom and liberty is the path towards prosperity. Certainly oppression and authoritarianism leads to conflict, war, crisis, and starvation. We have seen these authoritarian regimes, and we've seen how they end up starving and failing. The best thing you can do is allow your people freedom and civil liberties. That's been the track record for some of the most successful nations on the planet in the history of the planet. The U.S. has a separate contingent of 5,000 troops deployed to carry out counter-terror missions and provide air and ground support to Afghan forces when requested. Since the start of negotiations with the Taliban, the U.S. has stepped up its air assaults on the Taliban as well as local Islamic State affiliate. Last year, the U.S. Air Force dropped more bombs on Afghanistan than in any year since 2013. That's right, Trump is ramping these things up. Hopefully, this is the end of it. 7 days ago, the Taliban began a 7-day reduction of violence period, a prerequisite to the peace deal signing. We have seen a significant reduction in violence in Afghanistan over the last 2 days, and therefore, we are also very close to the signing of an agreement between the U.S. and Taliban, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said Friday in Brussels. He will be in Kabul later Saturday for a separate signing ceremony with Afghan President Ashraf Ghani and U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper. The signing is intended to show continuing NATO and U.S. support for Afghanistan. The road to peace will be long and hard, and there will be setbacks, and there is a risk always for spoilers, Stoltenberg said. But the thing is, we are committed. The Afghan people are committed to peace, and we will continue to provide support. I'm going to say something that maybe is a little callous to my war hockey type friends. If we leave and things start getting worse, it is not our responsibility to dictate morality for other countries within reason. And for me, the line is pretty far away. Like what I mean to say is, look, there are a lot of countries that do horrifying things, and we don't march into each and every one of them with guns ablazing because we don't like what they're doing. We do not have the moral authority to tell other people what they should or shouldn't be doing. We hope that through progress, being the shining city on the hill, being that, beacon of hope, showing people, a good example of what liberty can bring for you, prosperity, technology, better living. Hopefully that's the path towards improving the world. I don't have all the answers, but I can say Trump deserves credit for this, and I hope he pulls it off. I absolutely do. I'll leave it there. Stick around. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. YouTube.com/Timcast. It's a different channel, and I will see you all then.